Hey, writers! I am so excited to bring you the next installment in our Author Insights journey. Today, I am joined by another author from Silence No More, Kim Berney-Brooke. Kim, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Oh, yes, I thank you so much. I am really excited to be here, to be part of this journey. It's been incredible. So thank you.
Yeah. The energy this week for our cohort of amazing authors for this book and for the publisher who's leading us through this has just been like so delicious, like
Yes.
so lighting us up. And I'm so excited for a release on Friday. So yeah, thanks for sharing your joy and excitement.
Thanks.
Let's start with we'll get into your author journey, but let's start with like what lights you up in the world? What's your passion?
Oh,
What's your mission?
yeah, this is always a hard question for me. And I always sit there and go, I don't know, because I've gone back to lots of journals that I've wrote, and they all are like, who am I? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And introduced me to this term, multi-potentialite.
Mm,
And it's an individual who has lots of interests and curiosities that they're constantly pursuing,
mm.
and creatives. And I'm just like, oh, that is me. I am definitely a multi-potentialite. I have multiple irons in the fire, so many different things, and they're all just there's like no real, like, if somebody's looking at it, they're like, how is this all connected? But in my mind, they're all coming together, and they're all feeding and interweaving and working with one another.
I relate to that so much. And that's
Yeah.
so beautiful and such a huh. I have to say when I first was introduced to evolutionary astrology, it was such a relief because,
Mm.
somebody who's skilled and loving looking at my birth chart and helping me see like this is how the pieces weave
Oh.
together had that immense feeling of oh, they didn't mess up when they made me. It wasn't like I got distracted and I was making
Yeah.
banana bread and then I added a bunch of cayenne pepper.
No.
Um, but like seeing on the one hand, seeing how it's totally okay for things to be separate and not to go together and like that's an interest and that's an interest and maybe they'll never combine, but
Yeah.
also then having curiosity and going, "Oh, wait, there are some things that I thought were disparate, but really they get woven in these cool ways." So, yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
glad you found that term that just feels freeing
It
for
feels
you.
so freeing, yes.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because it was just so much, like, even, like, "Well, what do you wanna do when you grow up?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What do you wanna major in college?" I'm like, "I could do chemistry, I could do theater." So there's just lots of possibilities, and I love them all.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I want to send the invitation out to everybody watching, to do a body check in. How do you feel when you hear that term multi-potentiate? And how do you feel when you hear that concept of you can be multifaceted and you can have these various interests and they connect because they're all you and
Yeah.
there are opportunities for you to express yourself in different ways without having to choose just the one thing. I spend a lot of time in space with business owners and they're constantly being told, niche down, find that one thing. And what I say to my clients is like, the common denominator is you. Right? So like you got it. You got your niche.
Yeah.
It's like your energy, right? And then
Yeah.
you get to do within that whatever you want. Oh,
I love that, so thank
that's
you.
that's beautiful. So tell us about how writing fits into your multi-potentialities, your
Yeah,
multi-potentiateness.
being a multi-potentialite. So, it was very interesting reflecting back, and I also was watching the previous interviews with everyone that you had done, who are also our sisters in this journey, in this book, and what was very interesting for me was everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, I've been writing since I was a little girl, and I have all these journals," and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not my life.
Mm.
So, it's a little bit of a different path, and I think writing came to me. I was dating someone, in high school, and we dated through college, and he really introduced me to writing. I know
Mm.
he's a writer, he, writes, and starting with, like, Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones and sort of that free, sort of unconscious writing, just, like,
Yeah.
free form writing, and that and I'm, like, revisiting a lot of that, and even through college, I took a poetry class, I took a writing course, and all of these, and I was saying to someone recently too, I go, "I just realized I am a closeted poet and writer, And this is my opportunity now to come out and say, "This is what
Ah,
I am and this is what I do." So, I've been a dancer my entire life, and
mm,
I say, like, dance saved me as a human being and helped me to connect to my body in ways that I don't know if I would have been able to had I not had that come in. And so it's been such a magical, amazing sort of life journey to kind of come back and see things that I've written when I was in college and when I first moved to New York City and 25 years ago. It's just all of these little things. I'm like, "Ooh, oh, yeah, these are here. They're all been in here."
huh. Um, I love the movement piece, and we can
Mhm.
get, kind of siloed and separated in ourselves about what creativity is.
Yes.
And, dance has a very, uh, I don't know, I feel like really restricted, it's like dance is strange in our culture because there's performative dance, and like you train for years to be a ballerina or a modern dancer. And then
Mhm.
there's like I'm cutting loose at a bar or club, and that kind of but this this expression we have of dance like nobody's watching is not how most people are invited into movement and like feeling creative in their bodies, right? So it's like either you're the professional and you're allowed to be creative but it looks flawless, right? Because you've got all those skills, or you're just kind of like, doing the Macarena, like the
It's all
dance
good.
moves you bust out. But this feeling of deep creation through movement is something that's
Mhm.
been a huge part of my healing journey. Dance was something that saved me when I was the time I was maybe 7 or so
Yeah.
through high school. I took modern dance classes with this amazing woman in LA and
Mm.
felt that was the time when it was actually safe to be in my body and process
Yeah.
things. So I so feel you on that. Do you like between dancing and writing, do you feel like there's similar ways of expression, or do like similar themes come up for you?
Um, it was really interesting, more in the process of it and the more of creativity and
Mm.
writing and it was the process of creativity. So one of the things that was always a big challenge for me is I would go into a studio to create, because I moved to New York to dance and to be a choreographer. And as I was in the studio, I would get these waves of nausea where my body
Oh.
was just shutting down and like, nope, you're not doing this. I'm sorry, honey, you're not going to go there. And as I was going through the process of writing this chapter, I had similar experiences in my
Mm.
body where my body was like, no, no, nope, we're not going to go there. We're not going to bring that up. We're not going to go into those spaces. And it was such a wild because I'd never experienced it before with writing.
Mm. So how did you move through that?
Well, I know, it's a great question. It was actually really interesting because one, the
Yeah.
deadlines, like I was like, "Oh, oh yeah, I gotta get this out there. It doesn't matter if it's good or not, I just gotta get it done." That was like
Yeah.
I was like so proud that I got it done.
Aw.
And so for me though, it was like recognition of like, oh, interesting. I This is a creative barrier that I have.
Mhm.
I have hit my upper limit. I have hit that thermostat. I need to work through this. And I think part of it was the naming of it and being able to recognize it. And then the other part was that a little bit of a disassociation between what I was writing and and kind of who I am and sort of kind of breaking that a little bit more like and go a little bit more on autopilot with the
Mm.
writing rather than trying to stay so connected with it. And I think with writing, that was a little bit easier. I know in dance, it's a little bit harder to do that.
'Cause it is, it's like
It's a
it moves
lot
through you,
harder.
literally.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. We usually use dissociation, with a negative connotation of, like, it's overwhelming and I'm leaving my body and it's a hyperarousal response, but just turning down the volume a little bit. I talk about, like, 2 different kinds of writing, like, leaning forward writing and leaning back writing, and I mean that very literally, like, I'm this way or I'm this way, and there are times when I find it so helpful to do leaning back writing. what you're
Yeah.
describing, where I'm like, oh, I'm leaning out back from my microphone, maybe not a good idea, but where I'm literally leaning back and just going, okay, I'm still here, but I'm not 100%
Mhm.
full sensory. It's not the IMAX theater.
Right.
It's I'm
Right.
watching it on my phone, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You got that little intimacy of your
Yeah.
screen and yeah.
That's beautiful, and then this piece of naming it, that's so powerful, and again, just wanna send out an invitation to everybody watching. As you're writing or creating in any other way, and you find that resistance, and maybe it's a physical sensation like Kim is describing, nausea, or maybe it just comes up as procrastination, you just keep getting up out of your seat, like, I was gonna write, but I just keep finding myself out of my seat. Can you hold some space for yourself to get curious and go, huh, is it possible I'm having some resistance right now? And like name the feelings. And this is where if you do like a body process like EFT or tapping can be super helpful. And you're not saying even the emotion. You're like, oh, I feel waves of nausea in my stomach. Okay. Oh, I'm getting a headache. Oh, you just name it
Yeah. Yeah.
to dissipate some of the power. That's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, do you wanna give us a sneak peek of your chapter? Just a little hint of what we can expect?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting process for me to write. I definitely am a poet first and foremost, like, I'm realizing that about myself.
Right.
I have done some, writing workshops, and one that was really impactful where I was looking at doing I was very obsessed with young adult books and novels, and really looking at those and trying to figure out how to do that. And so I've learned some narrative components with like how to keep a story going and how to keep it engaged and not showing, not telling, and all of these things
Yeah.
and narrative constructs. So when I first did my draft of the chapter to hand in, it was definitely more poetic and ethereal and less grounded.
Huh.
And I think if you didn't have a lot of the visual imagery that I was construing in my head or didn't know me personally and the places I was talking about, I think it'd be really hard to follow.
Mm,
Um, and so I actually had to take a step back when I got our first round of edits to say, oh, wait, maybe let me try to break this down a little bit more. Let me try to
yeah.
bring it more into the concrete. So I really have, I was really coming in at it from the concepts of how we tend to build these protective barriers for ourselves and it's really around blueprints that we have inherited
Mm,
from our mothers. I really focused in on my mothers. I have a birth mother and I was adopted, so I have two mothers, one who was a birth mother and the other who raised me. And I mean, both of them have influenced my life in various ways. And so I have these sets of blueprints from them, and that's really what this is about, is kind of
yeah.
uncovering that and like, where do these fall? Where do these not help us anymore? We see people in cages being protected, like to go down and visit sharks.
Mhm.
But are they always protective? Are they real for us or are they constructs? And
Yeah.
are they helping or hindering us? Are they
Right.
holding us back or are they helping us flourish?
And do I yeah, maybe I wanna be in a cage when I see a shark, but certainly not all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
"Oh, I'll go get a coffee." "Oh, no, I won't."
Yeah. Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
and I think, there's been a lot of, talk lately, around these perceived cages that we have around ourselves, and that people are walking through those doors, right? They're unlocked,
Yeah.
or there's no bars really there, they're just shadows, and we can walk through it at any point in time, but there's a sense of security of having that and that you have this sense of like, okay, I have this little confine and I feel very comfortable there.
Mhm.
And when you walk through it, it becomes much more scary. And how do you navigate that? And people aren't ready for that all the time. But yet they're jealous of people who do walk through it and kind of embrace and empower and embody who they truly are.
Yeah, I have come to love envy and jealousy because I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh, that's my first sign
Oh,
that there's something there that I want." Brené Brown has this really cool breakdown of, um, emotions and the way she talks about envy and jealousy. It's like it's really this longing. I'm gonna get all of her terms
right.
wrong, but, like, it was such a big insight moment for me listening to her talk
Mhm.
about that, where you go, yeah, there's something there that I want for myself, and I'm not allowing myself to have it or to even admit that I want it. And that's where that ping of jealousy comes in.
Mm.
So I don't actually like feeling envious. I don't like actually feeling jealous. But when it comes on now, I'm like, oh, I'm getting the message. There's something there. And of course it's scary as shit, right?
Yeah,
Because the way you described it at first is blueprints, right? And if the blueprints are given to me, great. Like those are plans and I
yeah,
know I can construct from that. If I have to create my own plan, that takes a lot of faith in myself, and it takes knowledge of what I want to create. And so, of course, like if that falls to me, it's whoa, it's really big. But I think that's such a beautiful gift, right? The subtitle of our book is "Empowering the Next Generation of Women."
mhm,
So to give this image of like coming out of a cage, or getting a new set of blueprints, or just even setting down the current set, there's this opportunity and invitation for young women who are at these choice points, deciding what they take on as their cage. They're building their
yeah,
cages right now, or having them built for
exactly.
them, right? And it's like, do I want to put this bar here? So instead of having to wait and try to walk out, you go, maybe I won't construct this in the first place. I'm gonna build a
Yeah.
hammock instead of a cage.
Right.
That feels
The
safe
swimming
too. That's a nice
pool.
cocoon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
Um, but yeah, so that's so interesting because I when you were talking about that sense of jealousy and seeing it more as a reflection of like what are you holding yourself back from achieving is such a powerful way of like flipping it and saying, whoa, this is something I'm holding back for myself. Why am I doing that? And how can I really navigate through that? So I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, like it's activating for it's activating me for a reason. And even the term triggering,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I'm triggered by that, which we associate with negative things.
Yep.
It's like, well, a trigger is a starting button, really.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh, right,
I'm
right.
I'm releasing something, right? It's a propulsion. It's like I pull this, and then something is propul
Activated and just
yeah.
kind of like move forward or
E
something, yeah.
exactly, and I think the difference really between whether we can listen to that activation and, grow into it or through it, or whether it shuts us down, is how much support we have. And this is not, this
Yeah.
is not what I think. This is what trauma specialists say
Yeah,
basically, right? It's
yeah.
like you can you can overcome and turn experiences into resilience when you know you can be safely seen and supported somewhere. And like,
Yes.
so some people go through like the biggest traumas we can imagine and have that support, and then they thrive. And then other people go through what we might think like, oh, you could totally, like, yeah, being
Yeah.
rear-ended sucks, but you could totally have an amazing life after that. But without the support, it's just they're like stuck in that loop of being continually re-triggered instead of like like propulsion. What's the word?
Propulsion,
Out of
propelling.
yes, propelled, thank you. Instead of being propelled forward, yeah, so,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and kind of thinking about, I know I told you I was going to do this and start asking you questions because I'm so
yeah,
curious. Because again, this comes back to my multi-potential light. I'm very curious about people and things and, like, how what makes people, tick, and, so you've taken on a little bit of a different role than you have before, where
yeah,
you were really you did guide us, through some beautiful, ways of creating and formulating our chapters. But you also decided to step in and write your own story.
yeah.
I would love to hear more about your thought process and your journey and how has that been for you?
Yeah, talk about coming out of the closet. So I've had the identity of being a writer my whole life, for as long as I can remember, So I identify as having these multiple interests, and yet I had that experience
Mhm.
you were talking about when people
Yeah.
ask, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I'm a writer." That was always my
Yeah.
answer. I was never gonna be a firefighter or a lion tamer. I was like, "I'm a writer." And I was so fortunate to have adults who said, "You're good at writing and you should pursue writing." I was like, "Okay,
Mm.
great." And I in my story, I write about writing and it being this anchor of my desires and what I really wanted, because I stepped away from it in my career very early on, just because I was looking for what's the thing I can do, like where do my skills fit? And I was approaching the world as like, what do I have that anybody wants? Instead of what do I want? So my story like actually talks about my writing journey a lot. And writing this chapter is like a meta culmination of it
Mm.
in so many ways where I it's let's see, how can I describe this? I absolutely love being a writing coach and helping people, and I really think that's part of my soul's mission is to help give a voice to other people and to help them feel really heard and expressed. So I absolutely love that. And also I hid behind that. Right. So it was
Yeah. Yeah.
like the the person who encourages everybody around her, like, you write that book and you do that. And yes, your ideas are amazing. And then like, I'll just hide back here in the
Rah,
corner.
rah, be the, cheerleader for everyone else.
Yes, and, a huge part of stepping forward and writing has been, I can hold both of those things,
Mm.
right? This is not an either or, like, either I'm the coach or I'm the writer, and, I've done several, of the author trainings for these multi-author books for Annette, and when she said, I'm feeling called to invite you into the next book, Silence No More," I was like, "Oh, no. Shit." I mean, it was, like, kind of an immediate, I know I'm supposed to say yes, and, the story initially I thought I was going to tell is very different from the one I ended up telling, but it was really and I said no at first, so I said, "Let me think about it," but I was like, "Pff, me? I'm not silent about anything. What are you talking about?" I'm fine. But the experience of being able to do the trainings for this cohort even and be a participant in it was
Mhm.
so healing. And I think this is a larger theme that's emerging where, we're out of the Piscean age, which is
Yeah.
leaders, martyrs, um, people on
Yeah.
pedestals. That energy ain't
Yeah.
flying anymore. And like moving into the Aquarian age, it's self-leadership. And so it was an incredibly healing process for me to be able to show up with my gifts and be like, all right, guys, here's how we can, here's what your chapters can look like and use my skills. And then also be in all of our circles and be
Mhm.
held as I was crying tears of self-realization or frustration and be celebrated with you all and say, I choose both. So this was my experience of I choose both, and really my first book where I've allowed myself to um, write about me. All of my books up until now are like how to write, and they're helpful and people love them. But they're you know about the technical pieces, or they're not even. They go into the mindset as well, but they're about other people's journey. This is like for like, here, it's for you. You can
Yeah.
do this. Like, let me cheer you on. And this is me saying, this is me leading by showing my vulnerable example.
Yeah.
And that feels so scary and so delicious all at the same time.
Yeah, it was so interesting because when we got the first sort of read of everybody's chapters together, it was just like I devoured them.
Yeah.
And each story just like, wow, wow, wow. And I just saw all of these connections between the stories. And yours and my story actually were there were certain aspects of them that were very similar in our experiences and kind of how we came through some of this. Um, and it's just just it's been exciting for me to see that. So, how was it just like sharing your personal experience versus kind of being this more of a director or coach with writers in this space?
It counterintuitively, it makes me feel more grounded in being a coach. Right?
Yeah.
Um in my writing, I've always led by example. Like people will say, "Oh, you're so vulnerable," and I'm like, I'm going to show you. You know, I'm a great writing coach because I've messed up in all the ways. I became a writing
Mm,
coach because I wished there was somebody who would have, helped me through all the places I was stuck. So I basically just created what I wished I'd had. So
mhm.
I lead from that place, but now I'm like, oh, I'm doing the things I've encouraged other people to do for years, and that feels, like, really good. It's this level of, like, extra level of expertise, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
also it's so beautiful to it's always beautiful, I feel, to experience what your clients experience,
Yeah.
right? And just deepening that empathy. Like, yeah, when people have said, "Oh gosh, I'm worried when I tell this story that some people in my life are, they're not going to want to hear it." I'm like, "I totally hear that.
Yeah.
I totally feel how that feels." Um and it feels very freeing
Mhm.
to just put things out and know that's it. They're out in the world. It's
Mhm.
done. And I don't have to be the holder of them anymore. I mean, the point of the
Yeah.
book hit home for me so much that keeping the silence is really what's gumming up the works, and
Yeah.
letting it flow free by, bringing things out into the world, in a curated way, right?
Mhm.
There's like my really big objective was to share in a way that hopefully wasn't overly triggering for other people. Like, I had some first drafts and I would read back through and I was like, "Whoa, that's, that's hard to read,"
Yeah.
and I don't wanna create something that makes people cringe. I wanna give
Mhm.
context so people go, "Oh, okay, I can see why you built up," because 'cause I'm writing about, like, the rules that my three-year-old brain created to try to make sense of the world and make it predictable and make it safe, and go like, and the rules really sucked. I mean, there were things like I can never get what I want, I can't trust anybody. Um,
Yeah.
but
I can relate to that.
yeah, but I felt it was important to give the context for that, so it wasn't just like, "Oh, well, why would you think that?" Right? Here's how that developed, and then here's how I unraveled it. Um, but I'm so grateful to, like, have these stories exist outside of me. Do you relate to that?
Oh, completely, completely, because I feel like I've been telling the story of this moment that had happened. So you have all of the other things around the blueprints and kind of these protections and like
Yeah.
your 3-year-old self of your rules that you're putting into place and to make sense out of everything. And for me, it was like the story, the core of the story, and kind of what kind of, well, wait, something's not quite right here for me.
Yeah.
Um, I've been telling people and sharing it so much of my adult life, like as the memories started to come back to me, of this moment. And so now that I have it out there, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I need to tell that story anymore.
Yes. It's
And
a
I don't need to live
release.
with it. I don't
Yeah.
need to live with it.
Yeah, and this I wanna, like, again, for everybody watching, really highlight this point, because one of the things I've heard from so many people who do wanna write their story is, "I wanna write this, but I'm scared that I will need to relive it as I write it." And part of our conversation today has been about, like, the nausea coming up and titrating through and leaning back to write and giving yourself space. And, I really wanna emphasize too that Kim and I both went through this process supported by a
Yeah.
truly phenomenal cohort of women led by a healer, right? So
Yes.
our publisher is also a healer, which makes a big difference, right? She's able
Huge.
to, like, hold us in ceremony and do somatic healing, rituals, and that held us through this. So, I mean, you do not need to do it alone. I would say definitely seek out the support and seek out the kind of support that really speaks to you and makes you feel held. But ultimately, the gift you're giving yourself is you don't have to keep reliving it. So you could think about the writing it down as going to, that surgeon who's finally going to take out that cyst you've been living with. It's not deadly, but it just, like, it keeps bugging you, and it's going to be a
Yes.
bit uncomfortable, as she, gives you the Novocaine and then digs around in there, but then it will be excised.
Yes. Yeah. And I just have to share this because my therapist keeps saying, "Can I read your chapter? Can I read?" I'm like, "Yes," because I've talked about it through therapy. So I'm more than happy to have you read my chapter and buy the book
Yeah,
and read the other women's stories too.
yeah.
So it's been such a lovely journey for me from that perspective, and just not only the support internally within the container we have of the authors and being held there, but just that external support with my family and
Mm.
friends, and just just even sharing with my therapists, um and sometimes I'd be like, oh, should I have told that person about this story? Do I really want them to know this about me? But then I'm like, you know what, it's okay.
Yeah, and ultimately, people will always make of what we share whatever they need to make of it. Even the
Mm,
things that don't feel hard for us to share. Like, you can say good morning and somebody's gonna take it and interpret it that,
mm,
based on what's going on for them. So
mm,
there's that freedom in that too, and just knowing we can share it. And again, coming back to, like, having something excised, that's not really a great analogy because, you cut out the cyst and something gross that gets thrown in the trash, but this is like something beautiful comes out of it. And it's not us going, oh, I'm just dumping this out, so it's not in me anymore. Because
mhm,
really, the practice of writing your story as a story, and you touched on this where you said at first it was really poetic and really ethereal, but it's like, okay, it may not connect to readers. So, our job as storytellers is to take what happened to us and get the distance and perspective about it, the distance from it and the perspective about it that lets us go, and here's my gift to you about what can be learned from this.
I love that.
And doing that, of course, makes it so much, so inspiring for the readers, but also for us it's so helpful because we are deciding how we want to be with that story going forward. We're like, this is the story of how I overcame. Here you go. And it like gives back to you as you give it
You're
out.
like, I know, and you're like, I'm gonna cry because it is. It's
Crying's
so much
allowed.
that
We're
I
here for it.
know.
Yeah.
I know. It's just like it's so beautiful because it's exactly that. It's just like here, and it's like it's interesting because I've been really obsessed with like trust and what trust is, and the I know Charles Feltman has a beautiful definition about trust. Where you give someone something, you make something vulnerable to someone that you care deeply about, and you trust that they're going to take care of it in the same manner that you will.
Mm.
And this is really just all in trust, all in
Mm.
trust.
That's lovely. I trust that you will take care of this in the same way I will.
Yeah,
Oh, beautiful. Let's
it's
end on
like
that amazing insight. So, the book is available this Friday, 9/9. You can download it for 99 cents. And even if you're a person who loves having the physical copy in your hand and taking notes in the margin, please consider downloading the digital copy for 99 cents, because what that does is get the book more visibility so that it goes out and reaches more people and helps more people. All the proceeds from this book are being donated to the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. So, your 99 cents is going to a really wonderful cause. And you're, of course, supporting amazing indie authors and indie publishing as well. So, Kim, thank you so much.
thank
Let's just
you.
end with any final words of wisdom to somebody who feels like called to share their story. What would you want to impart to that person?
Um, just, do it. Cheers. Just go for it and really examine those personal barriers and boundaries. Like, where can
Mm.
you like push them so that you can feel more comfortable doing this? Because I've just decided like I have 4,000 weeks in this life that I'm in, right? And Oliver Berkman's book, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for the Mortal, if you ever are interested. But if you
That's
look at
so
the
great.
average lifespan, I know you look at the average lifespan, it's 4,000 weeks. And I'm like, do I ever want to spend another week wishing away my time, wishing I did something differently?
Mm.
And I've just like, no, I need to take these leaps. I need to just go out there and just do them.
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. Spend your time writing instead of wishing.
Yes,
Or
yes.
wish first and then write.
Right, right.
So,
What was the phrase? If wishes were horses, beggars would ride, So it's just
Some
Make your
yeah.
wishes into novels, make them into poems, make them into dances, just make them
Yeah.
into beauty. We need more beauty in the world. We need more love in the world. Just, uh, yes, just put it out there.
I love it. Beautiful. All right, guys, you got your homework.
Oh.
Go go do it and enjoy it. Kim, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
absolutely
you.
delightful. All right,
This is
everybody, take care. Thanks for watching and happy writing.